Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, your boy Versus here, and welcome back to my Unreal Engine 4 Legends of Zelda livestream tutorial series. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at how we can set up our shield block inside of Unreal Engine 4. So essentially what the shield block is going to do is when you hold down the right click, it's going to put the character into a stance whereby they're sort of going to have their shield up and they will not be able to take damage from enemies once we set that up later on. We're going to be focusing on the animation side of things today for this video, and what we're also going to be doing is showing you how to set up a simple rupee collection pickup item inside of blueprints, as well as we've currently got that on the screen, but we've got nothing really to link that to. So first things first, let's go ahead and get this blueprint that we have got already for this shield. We need to get this spawned within the character when they load the game, and we also need it to be in the arm where it should be. So what you should have is a simple blueprint that looks a bit like this, a little shield and nothing else, not really anyway. So what we got to do with this then is we've got to set up a socket within the character mesh to attach that to, and that's going to be the right hand. So what we're going to do is go to Zelda and go to mesh, and then you want to open up your skeleton for the Link character. Give that a couple of seconds to load up, and what we need to do is essentially do the same thing that we did for the sword, but just on the other arm for the shield. So what we're going to do is scroll down and find the sword, and this sword, as you can probably see, is currently hooked up to the right hand. So we just need to find the left hand and then create a socket for that and add the preview mesh to put it in place where it should be. So what I'm going to do to make this easier, because mounting the shield when the player's arms like that isn't sort of going to give you the best idea of how it's going to look when it's, you know, properly being held. So what I'm actually going to do is use an animation to preview that, and I'm just going to set this to maybe the idle, and then you can see really where the shield should go. So if I go ahead and pause here, what you should find is the shield should sort of just cover the hand just like that. So what I'm going to do is find my left hand and the left hand side in the skeletal tree here, get your left hand, and then with this just go ahead and right click and add a socket, and I'm going to give this the name shield underscore hold. Just type that in there just like that. Now what I'm also going to do is add a preview mesh to this, and the preview mesh for this is going to be the shield. So type in shield and then find your link underscore shield static mesh, and you can see now that it is actually added the shield onto the character. However, as of right now, it's a little bit sort of distorted, so we need to move this into place the way it should be. So what we're going to do is I am going to rotate this round a little bit, and I'm also going to move it away from the hands because I don't want the hand showing through at all. And I'm also going to rotate the shield around a little bit like this, so it's sort of standing upright, so that way you can see, you know, the crest and everything on the shield, and it's sort of the way that you would normally hold a shield, which is simply just upright. So just keep making these little minor adjustments until you're happy with where that is located, and for me, if I turn down my camera speed, I think that should be about it. So what you should have on the other side is your hand sort of just going through these little loops that you've got on the back of the shield here. Just keep playing around with that until you're comfy, but I think for now what I've got there is going to be perfect. So what we need to do now then is essentially get this blueprint spawned in the game for the shield. So I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to close this down and we can get started on spawning in the shield. And the way we're going to do this is open up our blueprint for the character, which is within third person BP and then third person character. what we're going to do is use the same type of code that we did for spawning the sword, and we're just going to use that to spawn the shield. So what I'm going to do here, after we spawn the sword, is drag this out and spawn actor from class. And then the class for this is going to be link_shield. And then for the spawn transform, which is the location of where it's going to be spawned, should be your socket for the shield_hold. So let's just go and add that. So get actor transform, get socket transform, and that is going to be from the mesh. The mesh is the character mesh where the socket is actually being held. So let's just move this along so we got a bit more space, and we're going to chuck that in just like that. And then for the socket name, it's just going to be shield_hold. Make sure you type it exactly how you just set it up within the skeleton. And then what that should do for you is, if we go ahead and dive into our game and press play, is we should have the shield in here. Mind you, it's not going to be moving at the moment because we haven't attached that. So we need to go and attach it. But other than that, you can see it spawned it in at the right size, the right location. So moving on with this then, so what we've got to do is just do what we've done here. Attach to actor, or attach to component rather. Now what I'm going to do before I attach it to the component is I'm actually going to promote this to a variable so that we can reference this shield later on, and I'm just going to give this variable the name shield_ref, and you'll see this sort of come to use a little bit later on in the series. So with this, with the return for the shield that we've just spawned in, we are going to attach to component, and then the component that we are going to attach it to is just a normal one for now. For the target, that should be your shield ref, and that should have gone in there automatically. As for the parent, that should be a reference to your mesh. The mesh is what you're attaching it to, which is the physical representation of that. So what I'm going to do is, in the top left hand corner in the components panel, get a reference to mesh by simply clicking, dragging and dropping, and then just hook this up to your parent. For the socket name, this needs to be shield_hold. And then for the location rules, you are simply going to snap this to the target. So straight away, it's going to snap that mesh to that socket that you've set up already. And then if we hit compile, give it a couple of seconds and press play from here, we should see that we've now got the shield sort of running about and doing its thing in the character's arms. Now if you're getting some issues where you're not moving around properly like I am at the moment, that is down to some collision issues, and what I'm going to do to solve that is simply just open up my link_shield, go to my shield mesh, and then if we go down to collision, let's just set this to overlap all for now. And then just press play, and we should be able to move around as normal. But the important thing is that we've got our shield and it's attached to the character's left arm. So now we've got the more difficult bit, which is going to be getting it to sort of move his arm up like this when you try and block a hit, and we've got to set up an animation for that. Luckily we do have an animation for this, and if you want to access it, just go to animations, and then inside of here I believe it's sword and shield block, so sword and shield _ block. We're going to need to retarget it and retarget it to your link character, and if we open this up, what you should have is something like this. Now there should be a couple of other ones, and the one that I'm actually after is the sword and shield block idle. If I press yes and retarget this one, it should go straight into this pose, and that is what I want. Now the blending is sort of going to move it over time, but what this is going to allow me to do is sort of hold it out there, which is perfect. So with this, the sword and shield block idle, I'm going to rename this so we can use it later on a little bit easier. So I'm going to give it the name link_block, just like that. So what we need to do now then is we need to go and set up a few things. First things first, we need to go into the character blueprint and we need to set up the functionality for the shield block. So little things like, so you can't swing your sword if you're blocking with the shield, so long as you hold down right click, it's going to keep that shield block active, and it's also going to link that to a variable which we are going to be able to use to set up the animation state within the animation blueprint. So let's go ahead and do all of this. So open up your third person character blueprint within your third person BP, double click this to open it up, and what we're going to do inside of here is add a variable first of all, and we're going to give this the name shield blocking with shield, just like that. And I'm also just going to drag my sword reference to the bottom here to reorder it so that we've got this nice and clean. So I've got my shield and my sword variables together just like this. So what we need to do now then is similar to what we did with the sword swing, we need to set up an input for the shield block. So what we're going to do is compile, and then we are going to go to the project settings to properly set up that input. Give it a couple of seconds, and then if you go all the way down to your input tab on the left, action mappings, just go ahead and create another one of these. And this one I'm just going to give the name shield block, just like that. And then for the input, it is going to be on the mouse, and it's going to be on the mouse, and it's going to be your right mouse button. Now you guys can set this to anything you want. You can set it to like a controller input, but for me, for this version that we're making, it's just going to be left click for the sword, right click for the shield. So let's close this down, open up that blueprint, and we can get started. Now we're going to have to adjust this code for the sword in a little bit, but we can do that shortly. But for now, let's go ahead and do the sword stuff. So type in shield block, which is going to give you the input that you just created. And what this is going to do is whenever you press with the right mouse button, it's going to fire off whatever code that we put in here. Now what we need to do first of all is set block with shield to true, and that's going to play our animation. Now the way that we're going to set this up is we are going to make this hold it in that idle position, hold out that shield until you let go. So essentially when you press it, it's going to make it active. When you release it, it's going to make it inactive. And if we compile this, this is going to be enough to get it to go into those different states. And from here, I'm going to set up the animation stuff. Now we're going to have to come back in here because we don't want this to try and swing the sword when you're blocking, or block the sword, block the shield when you're swinging your sword and that kind of stuff. We'll set that up once we've got the variables set up within the character animation. But for now, this is the bare minimum, the bare basics, and this will work, and it's going to allow us to work with that animation. So close that. Let's go to the animations, let's go to the mesh and go to open your link_animBP. And then if we go to our state machine, what we need to do inside of here is we need to move our swing sword over to the left like this, and then I'm going to add a state called shield block, and I want the player to be able to go into this from the idle and also from shield block back to the idle. Now, if you guys want to make this shield block something that the player can do while they're moving, then you can. But for me, I don't think it's going to be something that I'm going to do. I'm going to make him sort of stay in place. So what you should have is something that looks a little bit like this. Now, what we need to do is set up these transitional rules. Now, with these transitional rules, they're going to need a variable, and that's what we set up that shield block variable for earlier on in the video. But we need to access it in here, so we've got to go to our event graph, and from where we're casting to the third person character, we need to drag this out, get shield block, get block with shield, and then simply promote this to a variable, and that's going to give you a variable that you can use within this animation blueprint to set up your transitional rules. I'm simply going to give this the name blocking shield, and we're going to use this to set blocking shield. Now, if we compile this, we should get the errors just saying that we have not set up the transitional rules. And we also haven't put an animation into shield block either, so open up shield block, and then with this get link underscore block, and then just hook this up to the result. Go back to the state machine and let's set these up. So idle to shield block, we are going to do this simply if blocking shield is true. And going back to idle, we are simply going to do that if blocking shield is not true. So simply use the not node in there just like that. And then this should be enough to get it to block with our shield. If I right click, you can see he's going to go into the blocking stance and it's all good. Now notice when I do that, I can still move around within my blocking mode, and that is something that I've got to fix in just a moment. And I can also swing my sword, or try to rather, when I am doing that. So there's plenty of these little bugs that we need to fix, but that is easy enough. But the main thing is that when I right click, it goes to block with my shield, and you can really see our character starting to come to life. Now, as for fixing the issues with the character trying to swing the sword, that's easy. We also need to change the character movement speed when we do that block as well. That's really easy. I'll show you how to do that. So, open up your third person character blueprint again. And what we're going to do is when you press the button to block the shield, we want to slow the character down. So essentially, what I'm trying to tell it to do is to stop any movement so the character cannot walk while they're blocking that shield. And the way we're going to do this is get a reference to character movement and set max walk speed. And by setting this to 0, what it's going to do is essentially stop the character from moving, so they'll no longer be able to move while they are blocking. And then if we just copy and paste this by selecting it and press Ctrl C and V, on the other side, when they stop blocking their shield, we need to move this back to the default walk speed. The default walk speed with the character movement component is 600, so this is just going to give them the normal walking abilities back once they are finished with that. So if we press play and then hold down, so right click to block with the shield, you can see now if you press left or right, you know, to try and move, it's not going to move him backwards, forwards, or anything like that. So that part is all good. Now, the other thing that we wanted to do is with our sword, we want to make sure that they cannot try and swing this sword if they are blocking with their shield. And the way I'm going to do this is when you press sword swing, it's going to run a branch check. And it's going to run a check to see whether or not block with shield is true. And what this is going to do is, if block with shield is true, I'm simply going to tell it to do nothing. If it's false and they're not blocking, then it's just going to do the normal actions for swinging that sword. So what should happen now is, with that in place, if I right click and then press left click to try and swing my sword, it's not going to do anything. There's no print string, there is no chance of me damaging an enemy while I am in this state, which is perfect. Now what you can do is you can click, and while you're swinging you can try and block with your shield. It's going to be a bit late, but it's going to fire off all the movement stuff straight away, which isn't great. So what we need to do is essentially, while the character is trying to block, if they're already swinging their sword, just do nothing. So what we're going to do is on pressed for this, for the shield block, we are simply going to run a branch check. And with this branch check, we are going to do the opposite of what we've done here. So instead of block with shield, we're checking to see if they're swinging their sword, put that into the condition, and if they are swinging their sword, do nothing. If they aren't, then go ahead and block. As for the stuff here for released, we don't need to hook it up to this because all we're doing is setting the walk speed to normal, which is perfectly fine. And then setting this to untrue, if they're not doing it, it's just going to be the same anyway, so that should be fine. So if we press compile now, what we should have is a clean version of this. So I can run, press right click, it will stop me immediately. I can't try and block halfway through a shield swing, instead I have to wait for that to finish and then I can do it. And I can go straight into it just like that. Hopefully you guys can really see our character starting to come to life. But for now, that is pretty much everything that I wanted to work on for my shield block. We've got the character blocking the shield, we've got the character swinging the sword, and we can kill enemies and all of that good stuff. Now what I am going to do is take a moment to quickly set up a little collectible item for the rupees, which are the little gems which is shown in the bottom left hand corner. I'm not going to dedicate a whole video to it as it only takes a couple of minutes. So what I'm going to do, within my blueprints folder for Zelda, I'm going to quickly right click and create a blueprint actor. And we're just going to give this the name Rupee Pickup. And then open this up, add a static mesh component so the player is going to be able to see it. So static mesh. And then we have got to give this a static mesh that we can use as a collectible item. Now you guys can use literally anything, it is up to you. You might be able to find something in the effects pack, in the starter content, but what I'm actually going to use is within the shapes there is going to be something that we can use, something like this little cylinder or even this little pyramid. Yeah, let's use this pyramid. So select your pyramid, which is within starter content and shapes in the content browser, and then just press a little arrow here to use that shape. Now what you've got to do with this is we've got to put it into the game so we can see how big it is. So I'm going to go back to my blueprints folder within the Zelda and just put in my rupee pickup. Now at the moment it is way too big, so I'm actually going to scale this down to set this to 0.5, 0.5 and 0.5, and I'm doing this in the details panel on the right there. And now you can see that's a more reasonable size. Now what we need to set up is a box collision, which is going to cover this little triangle, and when something walks over it, or the character rather walks over it, it's going to give them a rupee. So compile this and let's set up the code. So with this box collision, drag it in, get a reference, and then on the right hand side create a begin overlap event. For the other actor, set this to cast to third person character, so this code only goes off when you are casting to when the character walks over it. And then as this, get number of rupees, so we need to find the variable for the rupees for those gems so we can actually change that. So what I'm going to do is go to blueprints, third person character, and you can see we've got a integer value for rupees. So within our pickup we need to reference that and set rupees, and we are just going to do a sort of increment integer. So let's see if I can do this. Increment integer, and this is just going to add 1 to it. And for the in value here, we need to get rupees just like this. Whoops. And what we're going to do after that is simply destroy this actor so they can't pick it up again. So if we compile this, and if we add a couple of these into our scene, so let's add 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go ahead and press play and try and pick these up. Now we've already got 5 by default. Let's run over 1, and it's gone up to 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on, and it's doing exactly what I wanted it to do. Now you guys, you can get a model for the rupees, you can set up a material and all of that good stuff. It is entirely up to you, but for now I'm just going to focus on the functionality, and I have done just that. Anyway guys, I am going to end off the video here. Once again guys, thanks for watching, thanks to all the Patreons that have made this possible, and also if you want some help, feel free to just ask in the comment section below, or in our Discord server, which has over 1,200 other Unreal Engine 4 developers in there, and everyone is more than happy to help. Once again guys, thanks for watching, stay awesome, keep creating, your boy Virtus, signing out. This video was made possible by my supporters on Patreon. If you want more videos like this, check out my Patreon page using the link in the description. To stay up to date on new releases, make sure you follow us on social media.